Alrighty, and welcome back to the Mother-Daughter Disney podcast. My name is Amanda. I'm here with my lovely mother.
Hi, I'm Janette.
And today we are going to be talking about some mistakes to try to avoid when going to Disney World. So we try to make these as specific as possible. So like more specific. Some of mine are a little bit silly, I would say overall. But general things that we just want to avoid when we go to the parks that we've noticed from over the years of going specifically to Disney World. I would say more so than Disneyland or the other parks. Right. So, all right, what is your, and then no particular order, I would say too.
Yes, so. I have no particular order. I just came up with some ideas. Like I said, I had a hard time with this one because we've been going for so long. Remember that mine is looking at it as an adult, an older adult, as opposed to somebody who has little kids or, is a younger adult who wants to, zip all over the place. So you want me to go first?
Yeah, what's your first one?
First, one of the ones is clothes and shoes. Okay. When you go to Disney, everything can be adjusted. Every other thing that you do wrong can probably be fixed or adjusted or changed or whatever. Clothing is a big thing. If you get to Disney now, yes, there's a ton of clothing you could buy or could replace or could do, but it costs a fortune. Mm-hmm. So unless you're willing to shell out a fortune of money just because you have to buy something, I have more Disney World sweatshirts.
Yeah, I feel like it being colder than you expect is the big thing because it can get cold in Florida.
It can get cold. And
or it
the
can just
rain.
Get cold at night sometimes, and during the day it's fine. So.
And the rain is the other thing. So that comes into play with clothes and shoes. I mean, you could wear really good sneakers. I mean, have really, really, really good sneakers. Know that you're going to go to the park in these really good sneakers. You spent a fortune for them. They're comfortable, whatever. And then you're going to slosh through 3 inches of water in them. Mm-hmm. So you have to be aware that you have to be ready. You could have the most beautiful day, and an hour later you could be in, you've seen the pictures of all the water sloshing and whatever. So to be as specific as possible, I would say you have to always bring an extra pair of shoes. Say, I'm going to bring an extra pair, first of all, because if you decide to wear your sneakers in the park and get wet, you're going to need something to wear when they're soaking wet and you have to wait for them to dry. Always layer your clothes because it could be 100 degrees and then at night it could drop. According to what park you're in, what the weather is, whatever. Think in layers. Just think it's going to be hot, but I could have a little bit of coolness. Mostly, like you said, it's going to get cold.
Well, I'd say too, and so one of mine was more just a little bit on the same note. It's just making sure when checking the weather, it's just to consider packing for the different variations of what the weather could be is what it is. Because obviously it's not always realistic to bring extra clothes with you to the parks or bring extra shoes with you to the parks. But saying it's like, all right, the forecast is saying it's going to rain later today, so maybe we should plan ahead to say maybe we have to go back to the room to change shoes, or again wearing different shoes in the park because it's going to rain, or something like that. Right. Because there is flash flooding in some of the parks, specifically in Hollywood Studios. There's a lot of wild videos out there on Sunset Boulevard and Hollywood Boulevard where there is just like a full foot of water just like sloshing through the parks. Right. Now, not to say it will clear out, so it is going to eventually clear out. It's not going to, it doesn't stay like that the entire day or anything, but you could have an hour in the middle of the day where suddenly it's torrential downpour and you have this wild flash flooding in the middle of the park, and then suddenly you were in, your really expensive nice sneakers and now they're completely soaking wet, and it's like, all right, what do you do now? Right. And I will say Disney does technically sell socks, but again, like you said, it is expensive. Like it's expensive to buy.
You look at the socks and go, no, I'll just slosh.
If you need to buy more clothes or buy more sweatshirts, at a certain point too, even on the same trip we've had it, where it's maybe cold the first night, so you have your sweatshirt, and then later in the week it gets warmer, but then suddenly it gets cold again. It's like, all right, do you really want to buy another sweatshirt? It's like, again, that all adds up. Do you have room in your suitcase to pack it to bring it home? Even too. So it's just like, looking at the weather, deciding like what items do we need to bring for the weather.
And that's the hardest thing, because when you look at the weather, I mean, even us living here on the East Coast now, you look at the weather and they'll tell you every day it's going to rain. And then we have these beautiful days where all day there's not a drop of rain. And then you say, okay, what the hell happened? But the idea here is that in Florida, they are going to predict that it's going to rain, at least during the summer. You're going to have a better chance of that. In the winter, you're going to have a better chance of the temperature dropping as soon as the sun goes down. So you just have to, and like I said, you don't have to carry it to the park necessarily. You can always go back and get it. You can take a break, go back to the hotel room.
Depends wherever anyone is staying.
Where you're staying and whatever. But always be aware that clothing is always a iffy situation when you go to Florida, any type of Florida vacation.
And also on the same note as weather too, I have as well, is important always to be reapplying sunscreen, even in the winter as well, because even though it may be cold in the state of Florida, the UV can still be quite high even in the cold months. And so it's hard sometimes to remember. It's like, oh yeah, you still need to apply sunscreen even if it's cold outside. So it's applying sunscreen. Again, vice versa, when it's very warm, Disney does have a lot of free ice water in all of the parks. So sometimes stations you can go up to a lot of the kiosks as well too. Right. And especially when it's very hot, they'll have like pre-made little ice waters in the bag and they'll be able to hand those out. Right. And to say too, you can always bring your own water bottle as well. So you just take their ice water, fill it in your own water bottle to carry around when it gets really hot. We've seen people with the cooling towels as well. Again, Disney sells cooling towels. You can bring your own cooling towels. Right. Same thing with when it rains with ponchos. You can buy really cheap ponchos that fold up small on Amazon. Or again, you can buy the Disney ponchos as well for like $12. If you get stuck, you just buy there. I say I have their poncho. I've worn it, the poncho. I think it is nice. And then also one other thing, again, just on weather, is that even sometimes I don't always mind when I'm walking in the rain if my hair gets wet or anything, or if my makeup is running. For me, I have one of the expensive Dooney and Brooke Disney bags. And so when it was raining, I didn't want
always protected.
Yeah, I didn't want my bag to get soaking wet is what it was. So I actually wore a poncho just to wear my bag underneath it. But again, there's a lot of people out there who have ears or lounge flies or different, items that, if you don't want them to get soaking wet, if you don't want them to see the elements, it's just to think, it's like, all right, how am I going to protect my beloved item from the elements? Right. Again, there's something to say, it's like life is meant to be lived. It's okay if things get, a little bit worn and torn. Like, again, life is meant to be lived. Which is to say, sometimes you don't want to be absolutely
You don't want to
destroyed.
ruin it all in one outing.
Yeah, their wear and tear is different from being destroyed from the rain. So, all right, what is your next
Okay,
tip?
the second one, I'll do one that actually leads into this, is that when you go to the park, don't overload yourself with trying to take every little thing to prepare for every little thing. Like you said, Disney does sell things that you need. Disney will sell you a poncho. I mean, yes, it's going to be more expensive, but sometimes it's just worth it not carrying something. Because I find that being an older adult, I would load that bag up with, a jacket and water and my phone and my glasses and an umbrella.
I know, because it's hard because you want to plan ahead, but then you're carrying all this stuff.
But then by the middle of the day, that bag gets awful heavy. Yeah. Okay? Even if it starts out saying,
especially if you don't have a stroller to like put it out.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing. Okay, there's a little catch to that too. I have that here. Unless you have a stroller, I even put in my little thing here, unless you have a stroller.
But even if you do have a stroller, you can't always put everything in that stroller. I would say the stroller parking is just not fully monitored is what it is. So there has been stroller theft. And Disney will say stroller theft happens. They can't be reliable for everything inside of a stroller.
They can't.
So it's just keeping in mind that it's like, stroller theft happens. So if you're going to leave all of your items in the stroller,
be aware they could
disappear.
Well, one time our stroller disappeared only because the person took the wrong stroller.
Yeah, they thought it was theirs.
They thought it was theirs.
Which could happen as well,
we ended up getting it back at the end of the day because they went to say that they had the wrong stroller too, and it was exchanged. But years ago, we didn't think about it. Years ago, we'd leave the bag on the bottom and we'd leave something in the bottom of the stroller. And, I would never leave my wallet or anything, but, simple little things. Well, you got to be careful about that.
Yeah.
Because.
And not even just about people. One time we were in Magic Kingdom and we watched a squirrel go into a stroller, rip out this little bag of grapes, open the bag of grapes, eat the bag of grapes, and then leave. And we were like, oh my gosh, not this squirrel stealing a child's snack.
I know, and you don't know what they're going to go in there and pull out of those bags.
Yeah.
Okay,
So again,
they know how to open those bags.
Yeah, they're adapting.
So you have to be aware of that. But what I'm saying is that if you don't have a stroller, be careful because I used to carry a little backpack, and I said, oh, it's only a little backpack. What's the big deal?
It's heavy.
But it got heavy after a while. I'd have to have my husband carry it part of the time because my shoulders would just hurt. Now I try to go with just my little over the shoulder little pack because it just makes it so much freer. When you have little kids and you have to carry stuff, well, that's a different story. So you have to kind of adjust. But that was the second thing I thought of, is that I remember days when I'm dragging that bag behind me going, it's hot, I'm tired, and I don't want to be carrying this anymore. So just be aware that when you're packing to be prepared, don't overpack. Yeah. Because when you leave that hotel in the morning, you're all excited. And then by the time 3, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the afternoon comes, you're like, okay, why did I do this?
Yeah.
And you don't want to throw the stuff out, so you got to carry it around.
Literally, when I was in Disneyland with my friend, I'm gonna call her out on this, but she had packed so much stuff in her backpack. And I remember we were in Cars Land. If she listens to this, she's gonna be like, why are you exposing me? But they decided there's too much stuff in their backpack. They're like, all right, we're gonna get rid of some stuff. Now it did get chilly in the evening, so 2 of the big things were their sweatshirts, which made sense. They couldn't get rid of their sweatshirts. But
she had 2 sweatshirts?
But then, it was for her and for Jeremy. They both had sweatshirts that were in the bag. But then she proceeded to pull out this huge Tupperware container of goldfish.
Oh my God.
Laura, why do you have a huge container of goldfish in your bag? Did you think we were not going to eat during the day?
Yeah. See,
and she was like, well, I thought I'd bring snacks. I was like, first of all, this is a gigantic container and it's not even filled to the top. It's like half filled.
But see, a lot of people do that because they figure, why spend $7 to buy something in Disney that, where you can just stick your hand in every once in a while, take a thing of goldfish. But that's where you get rid of the container and you use the plastic bag.
I know.
So that when it's gone, the plastic bag goes in the garbage.
Or also just being realistic with yourself too, thinking it's like, oh, I'm going to save money by bringing my own snacks. But then you're in the Disney bubble and you're so caught up in the moment. Are you just going to buy the Disney snacks? It's like just deciding for yourself. I'm probably just going to buy it. Do you know how many protein bars I've carried to Disney where I don't eat them? We end up eating because then you're like, actually, I would like that churro or I would like that Mickey bar instead of my snack that I
That's so true.
So it's just being realistic with yourself. Are you really going to eat the snack?
So that was a big thing because when I tried to think of mistakes that I made, it's like, okay, I remember being tired of carrying that on my shoulder. So yes.
All right. So for one of my next ones, again, it's just a little bit different. So it's just saying, it's like when we're going to the parks, it's always good to check what is going on in the parks before you enter the parks themselves. So when we're thinking about the time of year when we're going, weather-wise, like what weather do you prefer to be in? What weather does the family prefer to be in? As well as thinking, what do the parks offer? So festivals. So for instance, Epcot has 4 festivals a year. Now there are times where Epcot does not have a festival going on. So if you want to go for a festival, I would usually suggest to go for a festival because it does make the park feel more full. Whereas when it's between festivals, sometimes it's like, why is there a big empty kiosk that's just covered up? And I'm like, oh, it's because we're between festivals right now.
Right.
Same thing with other things going on in the parks. If there's a Run Disney race, you're going to see a lot of runners around. If there's any popular competitions like the dance competitions, the cheer competitions, there's bands that go, choirs that go, again, things like that. It's like sometimes it's like having, the well awareness of like what might be happening in the parks, because that will affect the people who are in the parks too, as well as the resorts. So for instance, I've heard people say they will stay at Art of Sports, for instance, but they did not know the cheerleading competition was going on. So they're the cheerleaders outside practicing their routines until all hours of the night, where their kids are trying to sleep and they did not know that was going to happen. Now, these are things that you can kind of look up the schedules for online. There's a lot of Facebook groups and, different people on Reddit and stuff like that.
Well,
who will
see,
say
groups like
timing.
what you're talking about, I would never even think about that until that time where you said that you ran into that. Because you say to yourself, okay, I know that there's groups in the park, but you don't think about what's going on at the hotels.
Yeah, externally, because again, that can affect your hotel stay, especially too with the pools. So it's now saying you're going to the pools, all these extra people maybe are at the pools or something. And as well as too for the holidays. So, some people say August is too soon to start celebrating Halloween, but the parks will be starting to celebrate Halloween in August. So in a way, that's kind of nice. If you're a big Halloween person and you can't go in October, go in August.
Go in August, cheaper.
Disney will start celebrating Halloween, and I would say early to mid-August is when they
Next week.
Yeah, I was like all the decorations.
Next
and
week
stuff
they're
goes
already
up.
going to have the Halloween party.
Yeah, Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween party will start. Same thing for the other parks as well too. They'll start to trickle in all of the Halloween fall items.
Yeah, Magic Kingdom will be all decked out, but they'll start to trickle in.
But again, too, that's also vice versa. If you're not a Christmas person, then I would say November, December is not the time to go to the parks.
No.
And that is definitely not even early January, not the time to go to the parks if you're not really into Christmas, if you're not really into the festivals. And that's okay too if that's not your time or if that's not your thing. But then it's just
weather is also a big deal.
Yeah, just
I refuse to go
when
it's 105 degrees because it's just too much.
Yeah, that's why we don't go in July anymore, because we used to go a lot when I was a kid for 4th of July.
When we were younger and the heat didn't bother me as much, I would say because we've spent time there where it's been nicer in Florida than it was here.
Yeah, it just depends on the weather.
It just depends, but if you're going to plan, you're more than likely going to get 100 degrees and humidity in July and August than you will in September or October.
Yeah, so again, just to say, sometimes like what's going on in the parks, what's going on in the surrounding areas, good to know. Again, time of year, like we say, kind of tying back to that weather element. What weather are you going to feel most happy in when you're in the parks? And so sorry, what's your next tip?
My next one was time. Just time. It's something that people don't think of when you get to Disney. The first time I got to Disney, I was like, oh my God, so much to do, so many places to go, so many things to see. You're running from place to place. You're doing this, you're doing that. Well, now Disney became more of a planning kind of vacation as time has gone on. It's more planning with the lightning lanes. It's more planning of what you want to do. It's more planning of where you want to be. You got to make dinner reservations because these restaurants fill up to the point where you cannot just walk up and say, I want to sit down and have dinner or I want to have lunch. Even the fast food, it takes longer than you think it's going to take. The lightning lane line takes longer than you think it's going to take because a lot of people get the lightning lane. Even though you think, oh, I'm going to get lightning lane lane and zip right through. It doesn't happen. When you have to get to the park, you have to go through the toll, you have to park the car, or you have to get on the monorail, or you have to go through the transportation center. Add all those minutes in, and that time becomes a factor. So if you think you're going to get to the park and you're going to run from thing to thing to thing to thing and do everything, think twice. Because all you're going to do is get frustrated. You got to plan that there's going to be traffic. You got to plan that there's going to be a wait to get in, to park the cars. You've got to stay online where they tell you to park. You've got to get on the monorails. You've got to get on the trams. By the time you get into the park, you got to, if you order your food, you still got to wait for it. God forbid there's, big long line there. Then you're waiting for food. Then you're waiting to sit down. Then just remember that time is not yours.
Yeah, that's what I had to, was spacing out reservation times. So specifically when it comes to lightning lane and dining reservations, because from lightning lanes to dining reservations, like my mom said, it's going to take a lot more time to move about the park and move between parks than maybe anticipated. So for me, especially when it comes to lightning lanes, now in the My Disney Experience app, the app will tell you when you have overlapping reservations. So if you have a dining reservation at 5 and you're trying to book your lightning lane for 4:30, the app will tell you have overlapping reservations at this time. Now in theory, you can probably still go on a ride at 4:30 and still make your reservation at 5. But again, it depends. Sometimes the ride may break down. Sometimes you can be on the ride and then it breaks down.
Right.
So it could take a little bit longer.
Right.
So I have had it before where I had booked, again, especially when you're stacking lightning lane reservations, it's really hard not to want to stack the lightning lanes, because if you're paying the money for the lightning lanes, you want to maximize. You want to maximize your dollar for the lightning lane. So you're like, all right, I'm just going to book as many as I can. So when you see the times pop up, it's very tempting to say, I'm just going to book them all right now. And I've done that before, where I had booked Space Mountain, and then we booked Tiana's Bayou Adventure, and then we had booked Buzz Lightyear. Then
I wasn't with her on that one.
Then we had Big Thunder Mountain, and my husband and me were running back and forth in that park. And it was to the point where, like you were saying, it's like I remember sitting on Tiana's Bayou Adventure, and the log flumes were piling up. There was traffic in the log flumes on the ride, and I felt anxious because we were not going to make our next lightning lane reservation. And no one wants to feel anxious when you're when you're like that, especially when you're trying to have fun, right?
That's what I'm trying to say.
Supposed to be having fun on
this
vacation.
Your vacation is no longer yours. If the time is not yours and you're already stressing over where you have to be and how you have to do it.
Yeah. So just to say, it's like, so spacing out the reservations, understanding this, like if you're prioritizing the rides for which ones you want to go on for your lightning lanes or for your dining reservations, and then giving yourself enough time to actually enjoy the ambience of the park, to take your time to walk to whatever your next item may be. Again, sometimes it is fun to stack lightning lanes and to run around the park like that like crazy, because it can be kind of exhilarating for it.
Yeah,
but at the same time, if you're finding that you're on a ride and you feel anxious that you're not going to make your next lightning lane or your dining reservation, then maybe it's time to, for myself, saying this to myself, maybe I should step back and reevaluate how we're planning this trip right now. And again, we didn't make Buzz Lightyear that trip, but we missed the lightning lane time and we just didn't do it. So we just ended up going, having dinner, and then that was it.
I wasn't with her because I would not be running back and forth from side to side of the park. So she dragged poor Ted back and forth.
All right, what is your next tip?
Well, one of the other ones is, this is a funny one, signage, okay? Disney has a million signs, okay? Some of them are very clear and some of them are very confusing. The biggest one is the bathroom signs, okay? They're a riot. I think you should be aware, especially when you send kids, like if you have a younger child, that you can say, okay, go to the bathroom, I'm right behind. The signs on the doors sometimes are very hard to understand, whether you're going into the men's room or the ladies' room. And it depends upon where you are, like maybe an Animal Kingdom somewhere or at a restaurant somewhere, where they're trying to stay in the culture or the different languages or the different signages. You could get very lost very quickly by not stopping to say, wait a minute, let me look at this twice before I go and do something. Some of the signs, like I said, even in Animal Kingdom, they'll tell you an arrow that says, go this way. And then I'll get halfway through and go, okay, where am I going? What am I doing? So signage is always something that you have to think about. Follow the signs because they'll give you the easiest way to go. But just be aware that when you're walking into something, look up first and say, okay, where am I?
All right. So my next one is that, so for the most part, our family is very ride oriented. And I feel like a lot of people who go to Disney are also very ride oriented as well too. And rides, the parades, the fireworks. I would say there's a lot of smaller shows in the parks that are also very fun as well too, that can be very underrated.
Yes.
So not just, I'm saying, like, for instance, like just the shows that you even sit down on, like Mickey's PhilharMagic, or some of the shows in Epcot as well too. There's a lot of shows you can just go and you can just be entertained and you can just watch a show. Right. But that also includes a lot of the street shows too, especially in Hollywood studios. They have the street performers.
They come
on
down the
Sunset
street,
on
right?
Hollywood Boulevard. They will do these fun little shows. They will interact with the crowd. They're usually a lot shorter as well too, so you can just stop. You can have this like fun little interaction, and that happens in all 4 parks. Where there'll be little shows here and there that happens, just out and about, as well as especially in Animal Kingdom, they'll do little not animal shows, but they'll have animals. Sometimes like a cast member will hold an animal and they'll be walking around. And you can see the animal and you can ask questions about it. They have their names and everything. So again, I'm still very ride oriented person, but I would say it's definitely a mistake to overlook those shows, to run past every single show just to get to your next reservation, to get to a dining reservation, to get to food. Or sometimes it is fun to just again taking that second to be like, wow, this is like a really cute, fun show right here. Can be again just underrated. I feel like some of the ones that are more popular, like the Harambe Drummers and Harambe Square in Animal Kingdom, that always draws a big crowd. But again, that's like a good example to say it's like this is a cultural show that you're watching. That's like this is what they do in this area in Africa, which is really cool to see. Again, that happens a lot in Epcot too. All of the Epcot pavilions will have little shows like that where again it's just when there's acrobats in China, there's a Sergio like comedy show in Italy.
Right.
So
there's
again,
the band that comes out of Canada.
Yeah, there's different bands that come in Canada. There's a band also in England as well too.
England in the back behind the pavilion.
Yeah, so it's fun sometimes to see these localized shows and say it's like, oh wow, like this is something different and something that isn't on the map or isn't going to be on the main itinerary that you're just probably going to walk into by accident, but then can end up being one of the most entertaining, things that you kind of can see. So very underrated. Definitely don't want to just walk past every single show. All right, and then I think I only have one more left.
Well, my last one too is really kind of goes in with that. Mine one was planning. Okay, I thought back because, like I said, we've been going for so many years that I thought back and I said, okay, we've had a couple of stages. We've had stages where you've been babies, where you've been teenagers, where you're adults. I'm an older adult. I started off very young, running here, there, and everywhere and being out all day and doing whatever, and I can't do that anymore. So the idea here is the planning. When you're planning this trip, Disney is one of those places that, like you said, there are things to stop and do something else. You can be ride oriented. You can pick your favorite rides and say, look, these are the ones we have to go on, and these are the ones that we don't have to go on, and then make plans. We used to go for the whole week, usually when we came down, and I always tried to offset the days. Like if we were going to 4 parks and we were there for 7 days, well, 2 of the days in between were days that we just sat by the pool and then maybe went out to do something else or went to the movies in Disney Springs or even just walked around Disney Springs just to get the feel or go into the Disney store, because I felt that you cannot overload anybody for 7 days. Disney is just growing. It's just so much to see, so much to do. And every time you go down, there's something new. And like Amanda said, you got to take the time to see all the other stuff. Once you do the rides, once you understand that, then you start seeing all these little shows and all these little interactions and all these things that you kind of say, let's go over there and go sit, because that's a 15 to 20 minute show that at least we can catch our breath and at least we can do that. And that's what I thought of when I thought back and said, what mistakes do you make? And I said, well, mistakes were, we would stay at the park. I remember clearly we stayed at the park to see one of the big parades coming down. It was one of the nighttime parades that Magic Kingdom used to have. It was like a lit up parade that used to come down. And we stayed all day. We did what we had to do just so you could see the parade. As soon as that parade came down, I looked down at your stroller and there you were, sound asleep. We could have been back at the room at that time. So I think you have to think about taking time while you're at the park.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then my last tip here I have is not telling so for instance, if when you're going down to the park, whoever your party is, whether it's your family, whether it's a group of friends or something, is not telling the whole party what the general plan for the trip is going to be.
Oh yeah, I always ask.
So typically I find when a lot of people go on a big Disney trip, 1 or 2 people are planning the vast majority of the trip. So they're booking the resorts, they're deciding which parks we're going to go on which days, they're going to do a lot of the dining reservations. Again, all that stuff you have to plan ahead. You have to book your hotel, you have to do dining 60 days in advance, you have to do lightning lanes 1 week in advance. So again, usually there's 1 or 2 people who are doing all of those planning items. But then sometimes when you're in the thick of it and you're planning all of that, the rest of the family doesn't know what's going on. So then they show up on the trip and they're like, wow, what's happening? Where are we going? What are we doing? Why aren't we doing A, B, or C?
Right.
So it's just to say, making sure the entire family kind of knows what is the overarching game plan for the trip. So that way, everyone kind of knows what's going on. So that way also that you don't miss anyone's must-dos. So for instance, if they're,
That's
again,
the
for
one I
dining
remembered.
reservations and you realize it's like, all right, we're going to go be eating at Via Napoli, for instance, but someone says like, actually, I really want to eat at this very specific location elsewhere in Epcot.
Right.
It's like, okay, well, that's good to know for the planners, so to speak, so they can make sure they work that into the overall plan. Or again, even during the day that we know as we're going to Epcot, here's what we're generally doing today in Epcot. Here's the general times of when we're doing things. So again, if someone says, actually, I really want to do, this specific thing in Epcot, I want to go look at, the manatees, and by the seas. It's like, okay, that's good to know. Then we'll make sure we do that. We make sure we hit it. As that way the whole family knows. Now, if there's a big party and there's splitting, objectives that people want to do, then it's like, all right, what time of day is the best time for us to split, where some people are going to go do the big thrill rides and other people want to go shopping or do something else. So again, I feel like this also helps too, then that way no one can fully just be complaining the whole time that they didn't get their way or they didn't get to do what they wanted to do.
Right, they missed what they really
If
wanted.
everyone kind of has an idea of what we're doing before we go to the parks, then it minimizes the complaining, because then, then you should have said you wanted to do A, B, or C before we got there.
Right.
So that way we could have prioritized it in the grand schedule of the things. Because it's hard when Disney is such a planned trip and so many things have to be pre-planned. And again, even in the day of, everything is going to change.
Right, it could change. Yeah,
everything changes in the day of.
Yes,
you can get
may have to make changes and adjustments and whatever.
Again, a lot of lightning lanes are made last minute. You can make last minute dining reservations too. Again, it's like a lot of, even the parks now, again, if you have date-based tickets or if you have a park hopper, you can switch parks, the day of as well too. So again, things can always change the last minute to make sure you do hit everyone's must-dos. But there are definitely times when we stroll up to that park and my dad's like, so what are we doing today? Where are we going today?
That's because he never asked before time.
My dad is very go with the flow, so he wouldn't be bothered if we didn't or did
you
not
just
do
tell
something.
him where. You just say we're going over there, and then he's 5 feet ahead of us.
Yeah, so I know
and
he's
all
like
of
leading
Amanda's
the way.
vlogs,
and
you see his head. It's like a game. His head in front
but again,
of us.
so that way he just knows. It's like, all right, here's the general gist of what's
he's
going
very
on and what
easy
we're doing.
going.
So then that way it's like, all right, we know the direction that the day is going to take. So that way, in case maybe if someone's not feeling
the
well,
only thing
or
he
getting
cares about is
overheated.
where we eat dinner.
Yeah, that's the main thing he just wants to know, because my dad likes to sit down to dinner. We don't usually do quick servers for dinner, at least. But yeah, so just to say, good to know. Again, I feel like all of what we had here was all about planning, because Disney is a very planned trip.
It has become a planned
it definitely
trip.
Well, I say to maximize your time in the parks, it has to be planned. If you're just going for vibes, you can definitely just go for vibes and just go and have fun.
We haven't gone alone. Joe and I went there once alone for a weekend. It was the only time we ever went to Disney by ourselves for a weekend. But if we went alone, I would not be planning all of the lightning lanes and all of the stuff going on and whatever. We'd be more like, okay, let's just float through and see what's going on. Maybe we'll do one lightning lane for like my safari, so I get to do that. But you can do either vacation. You just have to know what your audience is.
Yeah, and again, we want to know how much do you really want to maximize the time that you have in the parks, or do what you want to do. So it just depends on the type of trip you want to have. But all right, we will have our Disney quote. Now our Disney quote is, "Giving up is for rookies." Said by Phil from Hercules. That's right. We will not give up on our planning to our vacation. We will have fun. We will force the fun if we need to be.
Amanda's favorite thing is, we can power through. And my favorite answer is, no, we can't.
Well, no, there's a lot of times you power through and you've been fine.
I have powered through a lot.
My bachelorette, my friends powered through real hard on that trip.
Our friends
they
really
powered through a lot. Yeah.
And Ted did power through that week.
Power through. Laura and Jeremy.
That vacation where Ted powered through, I got sick. So I couldn't
Ted power
be
through.
in the
Again,
park.
even Laura and Jeremy, they power through too in
she was in
Disneyland.
Disneyland.
So I forced all my friends to power through.
Yes. This is Amanda. One time we were really, really, really sick on the couch, remember? And we were supposed to go away. And I said, okay, we have to cancel. The two of us are like dying. And she's like, no, Mom, we can power through. I said, no, Amanda, we cannot.
And we did not power through.
We did not power through. I have a little bit more of a challenge powering through.
I feel like, all right, normally we end on our Disney memory. I feel like we already shared.
Oh, God, we
Disney
shared so
memories,
much, yes.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for this week listening to this week's episode of the podcast. Give us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Leave a comment down below if you're watching on YouTube. Let us know what mistakes have you made in the parks that you would hope for other people not to make. And again, we'll have everything linked in the description as well, too, for our social media. But until then, we'll see you